introductions. We've had all the pomp and circumstance. We've had all the fuss and feathers. But it's time. It's time for Dodger baseball.
And we're live. Thank you guys for listening to the Incline Dodgers podcast presented by Fanduel, TickPick, and BLEAV. We have an exciting, jam-packed episode tonight. The Dodgers, the World Baseball Classic, so much, but I am joined by Chris Camello tonight on a Monday, March 16th. Let's do this thing. First off, Chris, how you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing good, but a little sad because my paisanos, the Pasquantinos, the Cagliones, that whole crew, the Cinderella story of the WBC was eliminated tonight. Team Italy finally suffered a loss, and it came at the worst time in the semifinals against Venezuela as they stormed back in the seventh inning. So, you know what? For a team that I don't think anyone expected to get out of pool play, they got a lot to be proud of. So I just want to say shout out to the entire Team Italy organization, starting from GM Ned Coletti to manager Francisco Cervelli to the tremendous talent on the field. Unfortunately, Venezuela, though, they were just able to get to them late. And sometimes, you leave a door open. They had opportunities to kind of put them away early, and they couldn't capitalize on it. And a lot of those guys in Venezuela really stepped up. Acuna, Arise, the infield hit, I think, from Garcia really kind of set everything up for Venezuela. But I just want to say shout out to Italy for making it this far, and U.S. and Venezuela tomorrow night should be a good showdown. And Dodgers decided to give up 3 touchdowns and a field goal today too, Kev. So we got to get into that as well.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. It's over. The Cinderella story for Italy. They beat Team USA, but yeah, just coming up short against Venezuela. Their first time ever making the World Baseball Classic finale. And kind of for some political reasons, I find this matchup a little bit ironic, but I'm not going to get into that. But it will be an explosive game. Noah McLean expected to start for Team USA. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but I imagine Eduardo Rodriguez will probably start for Team Venezuela. But I want to start with actually the best game. You could call it the World Series, whatever. In my opinion, it was the 2 best teams in the tournament scoring off in the semifinals. USA, Dominican Republic, absolute nail-biter. Pitchers duel. You had Luis Severino hitting 99 consistently. You had Paul Skeens delivering for Team USA. And he was electric, only gave up 1 home run. And that was it to Junior Caminero, but he was electric. And the story of this game had to have been obviously pitching. It was a 2-1 final score. Mason Miller closing it out for Team USA. But unfortunately, I feel like this game kind of ended on a bad note. It was the ump show, unfortunately. And so I want to kind of start off here. So to kind of help set the table real quick as a reminder, you had a runner on third, 2 outs. Gerardo Perdomo was batting against Mason Miller, worked a full count. Miller throws a slider, I believe, that was 3 inches well below the zone. And for whatever reason, the umpire got fooled, whether you want to attribute it to Will Smith's framing or he just misjudged the ball. Call strike 3 to Perdomo. That was the game. First off, from an umpire standpoint, that's just completely unacceptable. Like, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, even though obviously I'm pulling for Team USA. You never want to win like that on a give me call, but that's unfortunately how it goes. And Fernando Tatis Jr. doesn't get to have a moment. But let's start there. So I know a lot of the talk is, did the umpires give this to Team USA? Or where do you stand on this overall, Chris?
Did they give the game to Team USA? No, not necessarily. I think, you could look at it. My thing is, and you could look at all of sports. Does it come down to a few moments at times? Yes, it does. It does. However, you always have to ask yourself, and not everyone asks this, Kev, why were we in this position in the first place? So on its face, that was a bad call. And so was the Juan Soto one.
Yep.
I know Stephen A. Smith and Mad Dog Chris Russo. We're talking about Soto not swinging at the ball. And he should have. The play with Perdomo, who's got a good eye for the strike zone, that was a good take. Just a bad call by the umpire. Is anyone going to talk about the fact that they went 2 for 9 with runners in scoring position in this game? Is anyone going to talk about that? How many runners? They had Paul Skeens on the ropes a few different times, never cashed in. They had David Bednar on the ropes a couple of different times, runners at second and third with one out, and the top of your order coming up, striking out. And I know a lot of Dodger fans on here are somewhat gleaming with pride because they're thinking of the Padres and the fact that, well, this is what happens when you have to rely on Tatis and Machado and Juan Soto. And obviously Soto is a Met now, but this is what happens when you have to rely on these dudes in big moments. But that's a little unfair for this scenario. I think that was a bigger problem in the game for the Dominican Republic rather than what happened in Soto's at bat in the 8th inning and Perdomo's at bat in the 9th. Bad calls. Maybe you're right. It would have set the stage for Tatis to kind of redeem himself. It certainly would have been box office, Mason Miller versus Tatis. Now teammates, it would have been almost the second coming of Ohtani and Trout like we saw in 2023. Maybe not to that effect because it was a semifinal game, not the final. But still, it would have been kind of like all right, bro, let's do this. But that, unfortunately, we got robbed of that. But the fact is the game was decided by pitching, not by offense. And I had a feeling that could be the case. So it wasn't decided by the Mason Miller pitch, but it certainly didn't help in that moment. But I think the DR lost because of the other things that I said, not being able to cash in some early runs on Skeens and then later in the game against Bednar.
So I think the biggest winner for the Dominican Republic is going to be Albert Pujols. I have a feeling that next year, when we're in the next year's off season, he's going to be a pretty prestige managerial candidate. And I know the Cardinals extended Marmol, but he's a lame duck. Wouldn't be shocked if they axe him for Pujols if there's interest. Angels, another team that had some early interest in Albert Pujols. And I know Kurt Suzuki, I think he's on a rare 1-year deal with Anaheim. And so wouldn't be surprised if they kind of try to touch space and whatnot. But he did a really good job, and I really appreciated his answer after the game regarding that Perdomo botched call. Didn't blame the umps. Basically said, they had their opportunities to cash in, and they didn't, and said that didn't decide the game. So it pisses me off, and it gets to a question in a second that we're going to address from a listener. But here's where I stand. I hate games being dictated by the umpire, but I can go to bed knowing that it was Fernando Tatis on deck, and the guy was not going to cash in because he's Fernando Tatis Jr. The Padres aren't clutch. I don't care. Mason Miller was going to own his ass. He was going to blow 102 by him. Tatis had plenty of opportunities to step up in this game. And honestly, if we're being quite frank, what screwed his team over was getting thrown out at third base by Aaron Judge. That completely shifted the entire momentum, in my opinion.
It didn't. And just on that note, it also made the runners hesitate. Like Austin Wells probably should have came around to score and tie that game. I believe was that in the 7th? I think it was in the 7th. So he probably should have came around to tie the game, but because of Judge and the outfield defense, they were hesitant because of what had happened to Tatis earlier in that game. So that's a good point. I just wanted to compound on that real quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And now it's time to throw shade at the other San Diego Padre because he had his opportunities too. And I've seen this guy time after time after time in big spots. And I just feel like there isn't another superstar hitter out there that you want with the game on the line and expect him to falter other than Manny Machado. I don't know what he was swinging at in his at-bat. He swung, I think, at 3 pitches well out of the zone, And that must have been against David. Was that against David Bednar? I can't recall.
Yeah, I believe. No, I don't think it was Bednar. I think it might have been Whitlock. I think it was
Whitlock, yes,
Gavin Whitlock in the 8th, because it wasn't just Tatis. It was also my guy, Ketel Marte. I know a lot of Dodger fans probably can't stand him either because of the Arizona Diamondbacks and the fact that he, along with Christian Walker, kicked the Dodgers' ass in the 23 NLDS. I get it. But the fact is, I could understand Tatis swinging out of his shoes. I expect more from a more professional hitter like Ketel Marte. So I thought he also screwed up in that 7th inning as well. But go ahead, continue. It was Machado in the 8th.
Yes, thank you. So I haven't been a fan of Mark DeRosa, but I have to give him credit. He goes from the biggest zero to, I think, hero in this most recent game with one single bullpen decision. He brings in Tyler Rogers to face Juan Soto, and immediately Rogers induces an ending inning double play. That was massive for Team USA, especially against the likes of Juan Soto, who I've heard many people claim is at one point the best hitter in baseball or a generational hitter. But you got a guy in Robert Rogers who induces the double play, gets them out of the inning. This is a Dominican Republic team that was essentially averaging 10 runs a game. And I think this just goes back to the calling card that pitching wins championships. And it doesn't matter how stacked of a lineup you have, which obviously Dominican Republic had the best lineup in this entire tournament.
Yep.
When you've got Paul Skeens on your side and then the likes of some of those electric relievers, even if they struggled at times, they still came through. Miller, Bednar, Whitlock, you name it. Pitching will trump good hitting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was thinking about that too. You know, you have this electric arm and Skeens versus this great lineup. And, you know, we've seen this before. Great pitching can stifle an offense. And, you know, Dodger fans should know that firsthand. We've seen that happen to LA on the other side of things. Trey Savage, what he did to them in the World Series in one of those games. Hell, even Shane Bieber had a really good game against them. I believe it was in game 4, right after the 18-inning marathon. And go back to a year before that, Garrett Cole, he was cooking in that game 5 before the Aaron Judge misplay and the floodgates opened after that. So, you know, good arms and this is why you pay them the type of money that they want. This is why you give them, $300, $400, $500 million is for those kinds of moments. And what Paul Skeens has shown in the early part of his career is that he does not fear the moment. That is not an easy team to go after. That is not an easy lineup to go after. The J-Rods, the Martes, Soto, Machado, Tatis, all future Hall of Famers and guys who I think are going to accomplish some great things someday. So to be able to kind of withstand the storm, I know he made a mistake to Junior Caminero, but to get into, but then out of trouble really showed the guts and the grit of a guy like Paul Skeens. So, but you mentioned the bullpen as well. You cannot give those guys enough credit. And Bednar's not had a great career. Whitlock is still kind of young. Miller's a good player, but a lot of these guys don't have big game experience, and they have consistently answered the call since that, disaster against Italy. So you got to give credit where it's due. And they've learned from that moment. They were given a second chance after Mexico blew it against Italy, and so far they've made the most out of it. And that's why they're in a position to potentially take the title tomorrow night.
So Dodgers After Duty asked me online, should ABS be implemented into the next World Baseball Classic? I think this is a pretty simple question with an answer of absolutely. If that last game isn't enough evidence that you just need ABS, universally speaking, then I don't know what is. The last time they played the Classic, they didn't have the pitch clock. Now that's been implemented. And now with ABS being implemented into Major League Baseball, I fully expect in 2029, they'll have that challenge system in this tournament as well to kind of keep things in balance.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially if this becomes universal and it becomes successful in the MLB this season, I think we're going to see that. But because it's going into its inaugural season in the MLB, I don't think in good conscience they could have implemented it into this WBC. But in the next one, after it's been in place for 3 years and you could see the flaws and, the fixes that are going to come along with it and everything like that, I think you're going to see that, come into play in the next WBC in 2029. So, but once again, no guarantees Tatis comes in with runners at the corners and 2 outs and gets the drop on Mason Miller. But from an entertainment standpoint, Kev, it would have been great to see that moment. Teammate versus teammate on the other country. I just think from an entertainment standpoint, it would have been, fun to see.
Yeah, I mean, if that was a really close call and Perdomo took it, then you could make the case like he should have swung no matter what. But that pitch wasn't even close. So I feel for the guy. He made the right call of taking it, because if he were to try to swing at that pitch, it would be a strikeout swinging. So it leaves this bad taste in my mouth. I'm a little salty that it had to end that way. But It is what it is. We move on. Team USA moves on. And they don't have Tarek Skubal to take the mound for them in the finale. Instead, we'll see Noah McLean, who got a little roughed up when he played Italy just a few days ago, but it's a good bounce back opportunity. But with Team Venezuela on the other side, what I learned when we faced Team Italy, you cannot underestimate the competition. And Venezuela is in this finale for a reason. They took out Team Japan. Clearly, they are elite. They've got Ronald Acuna Jr. leading off. Michael Garcia has been electric for them. They actually have a really strong bullpen as well. I think they've thrown like 14 or so consecutive shutout innings. Really good team. So I expect this to be another low-scoring, close game, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the one thing with Venezuela is, they lost that game to Dominican Republic, but they fought that game to the very end. That was the final day of pool play. They were both going to advance. And what we saw was a team that, again, answered the call. And the one good thing about the team Venezuela is the fact that how many different guys, just like with Dominican Republic, just like with Team Italy, different guys stepping up at different times. Acuna has set the tone, but look who's behind him. Garcia, Eugenio Suarez, a bona fide slugger. You've got Luis Arraez, always a steady hitter. Tovar's had a really good tournament. You got the Contreras brothers in there. So, I mean, they just have had, and I know I'm missing some other guys, I'm sure, but they just had different guys step up for them. And then, of course, the back end of that bullpen with Machado and Palencia just really makes them a tough out. And, shout out to Miguel Cabrera, who's done a fantastic job as a hitting coach, and Omar Lopez, the manager. I don't know much about him, Kev. I don't know if you know anything about Omar Lopez, but he's done a nice job as well managing this team Venezuela.
I don't know a whole lot about Omar Lopez. He was part of the Astros coaching organization when they won the World Series in 2022. And to calm down Dodger fans that are still bitter against the Astros, he wasn't on the 2017 team. So you don't have to hate the guy. But anyways, good question here from Dennis Gonzalez. Outside of Bobby Witt Jr., do we underestimate Royals players? You've got Vinny P, Caglione, Garcia, Lugo. They all played pretty well.
Lugo.
To get to the point, Royals, I feel like, have a lot of underrated players, especially a guy like Garcia, who was really excellent for Kansas City last year as a third baseman. He's a Gold Glover, really good hitter. Doesn't get talked about a whole lot. Lugo, I think he's kind of on the downward spiral, so I wouldn't really talk about him anymore. But Vinny Pasquantino. Thank you, Kev. Great power bat, 30-plus home run upside. He's definitely also, I feel like, lost in the shuffle at times, but no, he's a catalyst for Team Italy. But I mean, Bobby Witt Jr., I know he said outside of Bobby Witt Jr., that's my MVP pick. Spoiler alert for 2026. I'm going Bobby Witt, MVP, AL.
Yeah, they got a really nice squad, and it's slowly but surely kind of come together. I think Witt and Pasquantino may have come on around the same time, maybe about a year apart. Jack Caglione, I think he was a 2023 or 2024 draft pick, so he just got called up, in the last year or so, and then Garcia kind of came up last year. So I think the issue for them isn't their hitting or their position players. I think you can kind of see the future of this squad, and to me, Kev, it's almost fitting. About a decade ago, we were talking about a young nucleus with the Royals that they ended up riding to a World Series championship and back-to-back AL pennants in 2014 and 2015, under who was it? Ned Yost, right? That was the manager, and they lost to the Giants in 2014, came back and beat the Mets the next year for a World Series title. So, you know, in a sort of a weak division like that, I don't think they're that far away. I do think they need more pitching, but they got a solid squad. And even, what was it, in 24, they challenged they beat, who they beat? Was it the Tigers they beat in the wild card round? And then they ended up beating, who was it? They beat they lost to the Yankees, but I'm trying to think who they beat in the wild card round. I think it was not the Tigers, but it might have been Baltimore. I think it was Baltimore. They beat in the wild card round in 24. So I think even then you saw what this team is capable of doing. So yeah, I mean, it was a good moment for the Royal players. And if you're a fan of the Royals, a chance to see what could be if these pieces continue to grow together, they get better. But also the front office, which I think is pretty solid, by the way, continues to add the right pieces around that young core. I always think, Kev, that is the basis of a good team. We have a young core, and then boom, then we could fire with a big-time free agent. And now we've got something really clicking here. I remember the Cubs, too, another example. They had the young core, Addison Russell, obviously no longer in the league. You know, Jake Arrieta, Chris Bryant. I'm just saying he was at the Javi Baez, Chris Bryant, Rizzo, all of those guys. Yeah, all the great players that they had. And then what did Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer do? Boom, John Lester. Boom. Who else did they bring in? They brought in Dexter Fowler, Ben Zobrist. They brought in a lot. They traded for Aroldis Chapman. So they brought Jason Hayward. Exactly. They brought in the right veteran talent to complement the young core. And the vets never put themselves above the young players. So as long as KC could do that, find the right veteran talent, position players, and then build that pitching staff up, I don't think the Royals are that far from being a real contender in the American League. So I just wanted to point that out. Yep. Your thoughts?
No, really, really great point. But you crack me up that of all the Cubs players you could have thrown out there, you started with Addison Russell.
I don't know why I did that, but he was good for a while, man. I know all the stuff off the field. I mean, come on. Has enough time not passed? We can't even mention the guy's name, you know, Kev, or, you know, is it out of sight, out of mind?
I think he's been blacklisted from all Cubs events moving forward.
Yeah, I know.
We'll do a quick question. I don't know if this is your relative, Johnny Camello, but you guys share the same last name.
That is my brother.
Nice. Well, thank you for tuning in. Chris's brother wants to know, who should I draft in fantasy baseball at 11? Well, that's kind of a nice plug because we just did have Derek Carty on a few days ago, and he did a really deep dive in fantasy baseball, especially on the Dodger side. So if you want to check that out, highly recommend. But to get to this point, you're a pick 11, so the odds are you're looking at potentially Kyle Tucker, Paul Skeens, Gunnar Henderson, Ellie De La Cruz. I don't know about Corbin Carroll with the hand injury. Fernando Tatis Jr., Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Those are probably the names that will fall to you. If he falls to 11, take Vladdy. If he's there at 11, honestly, I would take Paul Skeens above anyone, just because I think his pitching forte is just clear ahead of any other starter that will be near him. So you have a really good arm, and you can swing that back when you're doing the snake draft with one of these hitters. I'll just throw it out there right now. I think Gunnar Henderson's going to be in for a massive year. Kind of took a step back this most recent season, but if you look at his previous 2024 campaign, I believe he had a massive year. Yeah. So there's some good options
for sure. And Johnny, just remember, whoever you want at 11, just let us know so I could snake him from you at 8, because that's where I'm picking.
Right on.
No. I'm thinking a pitcher too at that point, because like you said, a lot of the hitters there are good. And I think you could probably get an elite arm with a good bat. You know, it just really depends what you want. Like even at 8, I'm probably going to miss out on both Skubal and Skeens unless Skubal falls to me at 8, which I'm not sure that will happen in this particular league. So, you know, I may just go back-to-back hitters and hope, you know, at 8, it's kind of weird because it's like you pick once and then you got to wait 6 more picks till it's yours again. And who's going to be left? That's where you have to kind of really be careful and really be sure on those first 2 picks. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, so to close out the World Baseball Classic talk, and then we'll start to transition into some Dodgers topics. So over at Fanduel, our partner, the Sportsbook, they've already got the money line for USA, Venezuela. Right now, Venezuela, underdogs, not really a surprise, plus 240. United States, minus 300. Honestly, I feel like because Team USA took out Dominican Republic, I would continue to ride with Team USA at this point. So I would take the minus 300. And it's just interesting. The World Baseball Classic 2026 MVP, I'm looking at the odds. I don't know if this is just based off the championship game or the entire tournament, but I would guess the championship game. Aaron Judge leading at plus 350, but Roman Anthony has just been a budding star and has been a guy that I've just been tracking pretty much since his call-up. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits another home run, and you could take his plus 650. And this is off the board, and then we can actually talk about Will Smith as a whole. He needs to start in this game over Cal Raleigh, and here's why. Numerous players on Team USA at this point have basically given Will Smith all the credit in the world. I know David Bednar in particular highlighted the fact that he really appreciated his composure. He really guided him through that adversity you talked about earlier in this recording when the runners were on second and third, whatever, with one out. Will Smith had a tremendous game calling pitches, and maybe it's a little bit of inception. Paul Skeens, when he's a free agent, he's going to remember that moment and be like, I want to throw to Will Smith. Just saying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Will is really grown as a catcher, and not just defensively. I mean, he'll make the occasional gaffe or something like that, but anchoring a pitching staff has been something that he has been doing well for a long time. And you think about the amount of guys that have come through the Dodger organization, the amount of bullpen games that they've had, especially go back to that 2024 postseason run. They had 4 bullpen games in that postseason run. And, that is not an easy thing to do, especially in the high leverage points. But, Will is really grown as a catcher. He's done a tremendous job, and he's all business. So you can't not tell the difference. I mean, Cal's fantastic. Cal's going to, he's going to bomb, and he's going to give you, the switch hitter. He gives you so many options on offense. And if he runs into one, the big dumper is going to send one back, 15 rows, into the seats. But at the same point in time, I think the substance that Smith brings to the table, combined with the fact that he's a 2-time World Series champion, and he could hit well in the clutch, it seems to me, I agree with you, like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you put this guy out there at this point? And, especially when Raleigh's not doing enough offensively, Kev, to really justify. But even offensively, I mean, it's not like he's hitting 350 or 400 with like 5 or 6 home runs. And is, it's like, well, we're going to live with all the defensive gaffes and maybe some not being on not being on the same page as our pitchers because of what he's doing offensively. Right. So at least with Smith in there, he may not always give you the same pop as Raleigh, but he could, really manage that pitching staff well. And you saw him help those guys get out of those jams in that game against the Dominican Republic, especially.
Mm-hmm. All right, so stay with me here, and I know it's a little premature. It's still early. I'm aware. I'm self-aware on this. He's still got a number of years left to truly be in that conversation. But for the sake of the discussion and the trajectory, I feel like if Will Smith gets 2 more championships, so don't even know if this is going to happen, but if let's say he retires with 5 championships, a World Baseball Classic championship as well, and has at least probably 4 or 5 more seasons of the offensive production that we've seen lately, you have to at least put him in consideration for the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I think we're going to get to a point where the voters start to kind of reevaluate what the standard is to get in, because there's just been a number of changing circumstances, such as players don't play as many games as they used to. Pitchers definitely don't throw as much as they used to. Mm-hmm. We've had events like COVID that took out basically a full season. Yeah. And so when you look at a guy like Will Smith and you kind of look back at his career thus far, he's always in the conversation as a top 2, top 3 catcher every stinking year. And so when a guy like that now is on the ballot, I feel like you have to, tip your cap and be like, okay, he was a generational catcher technically. He should warrant some votes if, things continue to play out in this trajectory.
Yeah, I agree. And, it is hard to maintain offensive production at the catcher position, which is why you see a lot of guys transition to first base. We saw it with Buster Posey. We saw it with Joe Mauer. We even saw it, not really a Hall of Famer, but Mike Napoli, I remember, was another guy that eventually, transitioned from catcher to first. Yeah, I think even Piazza, too, for a little bit toward the end of his career was playing more first base when he got to Oakland and all that, during that time. So I think, Smith is certainly on his way of being a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I agree with you 100%. And I think another World Series championship, I think if he did something else, like, I don't know, Silver Slugger, or I don't want to say MVP, but maybe if he did like an MVP or something like that, I think that would help him out a little bit more. That would definitely make the case a lot easier. But, Smith is on his way. And he has been a staple of this Dodger team for a long time. And how quickly he has grown has really, been tremendous, to the point where we're saying all these other catchers are expendable. Cartaya expendable, Connor Wong expendable, Keibert Ruiz expendable. Even now, Dalton Rushing. A lot of Dodger fans are saying, make him expendable. We don't need him. Why? Because we have an elite number one catcher, probably on the top 5 in the league, in Will Smith. So that's the aspect of it. I just think the question is, Kev, 2 things. One, is his lack of second half offensive production going to lead the Dodgers to eventually phase him out of the catcher phase and then toward third base or first base at some point? And is the other aspect of it is, what if he has a more precipitous drop off? Will that hurt his resume? I think those are the 2 questions. So
I like this. I like to think people have short-term memories, and if we're just going to go off of what he did in the 2025 postseason run, everything else I think is almost like Men in Black, wiped from your memory, because this is the guy that had the Game 7 go-ahead home run off Shane Bieber in extra innings. This is the same guy that just went bonkers and had a huge game against Trey Yasevich in Game 2. Had, I think, multiple extra base hits, including a home run. And he's had other big moments as well. Obviously, 2020, we all know Will Smith versus Will Smith. So you can kind of discard the bad and eventually have a nice little highlight reel tape, like a Robert Horry per se, where they call him Big Shot Bob, but how many big shots did he really have? Just a few. But because they were so legendary, he kind of coined the nickname. And I feel like Will Smith is kind of in that same category where, yes, there's been a number of failures, but those moments of success are massive.
I agree with you. And by the way, Big Shot Bob, you're talking about just like game winners. The fact is, he had big moments throughout. If you look at his playoff stats just all together, it wasn't just the 0-2, shot in Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. He had other big moments. The thing about Robert Horry was the bigger the stage, the better he played. Not to mention, he took on every defensive challenge during those years, guarding Chris Webber, Rasheed Wallace, Tim Duncan, etc. Sorry to get off point,
including throwing Steve Nash against the barricade.
That was not with the Lakers. That was with the Spurs. But yes, that's when he became Cheap Shot Bob in 07. And by the way, even then, the Spurs are like, that was a means to an end. Because if those suspensions don't happen, maybe we don't get out of that conference finals, and we don't, wax LeBron and the Cavs in a 4-game sweep without his contribution. So he definitely he fell on the sword on that one, but so did everybody else in Phoenix. But yeah, I think Smith, I think that's a good way to characterize it. I know someone else is saying, how would you rate him against Mike Scioscia? Well, I think Smith was a more naturally talented player than Mike Scioscia, but I think Scioscia was a better leader. And the thing is, those catchers during those years, Scioscia was able to accomplish a lot without having the natural ability of a Will Smith. So it's not really a comparison. Scioscia was a self-made guy. He was able to bring an element of leadership, anchoring the pitching staff and everything like that. And he still had big moments hitting. I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but it can be. So, but certainly he's on his way of having a Hall of Fame career. And, I wish him nothing but the best. And he's just a good dude, very businesslike in his approach. And it's hard not to like him and his professionalism.
Yeah. All right. So from Honey Oats, appreciate the question. How impressed have you been with River Ryan? And are you worried that he could become the next Bobby Miller or Dustin May? Well, the first part, I've been very impressed. And of all the Dodgers starting pitchers, any of them that have thrown this spring, River Ryan has impressed me the most when you factor in the fact that he's coming off Tommy John surgery. He's coming off gaining 25, 30 pounds or whatever, adapting to a new body. He's out there throwing 98, 99 consistently. He's also been wicked with the slider, generating swings and misses. And they're not going to start him out of the gate in the opening day rotation. And I think that's wise because, like I just said a minute ago, he's coming off Tommy John surgery. Mm-hmm. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Call him up in late May or June, kind of like what they did with Sheehan. And I'm sure there will be injuries. I'm sure there will be moments where they need to put a guy on the 10 or 15-day IL to rest because of their workload and whatnot. Also, we roster Tyler Glass now, so it's pretty much a given. But River Ryan will get his due. I'm not worried. So do I think he's going to be the next Bobby Miller or Dustin May? No, actually, I think he's naturally more talented than Dustin May for sure. In terms of what happened with Bobby Miller, I still don't have an answer to this day why Bobby Miller dropped off the way he did. But right now, Miller is working his way into becoming a reliever. We'll see if that happens, but it's been a very bumpy ride for Bobby Miller nonetheless.
Yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm just going to build on one thing. This game, and this is somebody who I'm not speaking on any experience, just what I've seen watching baseball my whole life, is filled to the brim of the haves and have-nots, the here todays, the gone tomorrows, the flash in the pan. That is the nature of sports, but that is really the nature of baseball. Do you guys remember a guy by the name of Chris Coughlin? 2009 NL Rookie of the Year. How long did his career last? He was a fucking Rookie of the Year, people. Gone. You wouldn't know this freaking guy if he was standing in front of you at Walmart at the checkout stand. That is my point over here. Carlos Martinez, Kev, just announced. You remember Carlos Martinez? Hard-throwing right-hander from the St. Louis Cardinals. Was a really good pitcher for a long time for them. Gone. Career lasted 3-4 years. So between injuries, inconsistencies, yeah, River Ryan could very well, I hope I'm wrong on this, Kev. River Ryan could very well have a great career, but he could also fall into what happened to Dustin May because of injuries, or what happened or what's happened to Bobby Miller because of confidence issues, mental blocks, not getting better, not fixing the flaws and everything like that. It's very possible. So it's exciting that he's back on the field. It's exciting that he's pitching well. And just like I said about Will Smith, I hope they continue on this upward trajectory, but nothing is guaranteed. Look at James Outman. We thought he was going to be the next great center fielder for the Dodgers. He's out of there in 2 years. Miguel Vargas, same thing. These things happen, right? It happens. You're even a great organization like the Dodgers, Kev, who draft well, who develop well, who put these guys in the best positions to be successful. It doesn't always translate to a great career. Gavin Lux had one of the highest batting averages. Another example in minor league baseball history, or in Pacific, Coast League history. Where's he at now? He's on his third team in 3 years. And what's his career going to be? A middling starter at this point. Yeah. You just don't know. So yes, I hope River Ryan is great. I hope Bobby Miller, like you said, could find a second life as a reliever. I hope Dustin May even can get himself on track in St. Louis. But between the injuries and the fact that you can get exposed and teams get you clocked after a while and you don't adjust to the adjustments, that's all it takes for you to become great to good to just another guy. And a footnote.
Well, that leads me to my next subject about people now becoming just another guy. Is Blake Treinen cooked? Let me elaborate a little bit further. He has been rough this spring training. I mean, we're talking about a 10.8 ERA, a whip of 2.6. He's thrown 5 innings. He's only thrown 4 strikeouts. You look at his fastball velocity against the Brewers today, 95 is not what I'm accustomed to seeing from Blake Treinen. Obviously, he's up there in age. He's getting closer to 40. His best days are probably behind him. He really struggled during the 2025 regular season as well. Only 27 innings, but he had a 5.40 ERA and a 1.84 WHIP. I hate to just jump the gun and start to get to conclusions, but if I had to pick one reliever right now that I actually have the most concern about heading into 2026, it's unfortunately Blake Treinen. But where are you at right now when it comes to Blake?
Two things. One, and I always say this about spring, you can't overreact. Whether a guy is hitting 350 to 400 or hitting 4 or 5 home runs, or they're struggling and they're one for the spring or something, you can't overreact in one direction or another. However, in the case of Treinen, what's worrisome is the fact that he's coming off of a rough season last year. That is really the concern. And the fact is he became unplayable, especially in the playoffs. And this has been one of the more reliable arms for the Dodgers for years. He's been a major part of 2 World Series championships. And the Dodgers, I think, gave him that 2-year deal. Not so much of what he was going to do, Kev. Here's my theory on this now. It was almost a thank you for everything that he had done. And you know what? We're going to reward you with the 2-year contract, knowing you may not live up to what we're giving you, but we're going to give it to you anyway.
Yeah.
We could afford to do it. You've worked hard. You've overcome multiple shoulder injuries and everything like that. Hopefully one of those 2 years will pay off. We'll see. And we'll take our chances with you because we know you're capable of filling multiple roles in the bullpen, which even with Edwin Diaz now, hopefully Tanner Scott on a rebounding season, and other guys that you hope to continue that will build up, the Kasparises, the Dryers, Vesia, etc. We still need you in that regard. I'm not ready to say he's cooked. However, I do think you're going to need to see more consistency out of him, if nothing else, so he doesn't lose confidence. Because if that confidence goes, Kev, then I think he's cooked. It's bad enough. The velo and, all of that and the command is starting to go. But if he loses the confidence on top of that, then the Dodgers may need to consider, cutting ties with him and everything. He's owed $11 million this season regardless. So,
yeah. I mean, I agree with you about a lot of your points, but I will say the drop off from 24 to 25 did really catch me off guard. And while there is some merit to kind of your analysis, I will say he was very just in that contract. Reminder, in the 2024 season, he had a 1.93 ERA across 47 innings thrown. And that stat on top of the cake, he was electric in the playoffs and was massive in that game 5.
He was incredible the whole playoffs and the season too. Season as a whole. Yeah, he stepped up for them. Anyway, continue.
So my point is they definitely know what they were getting into with the factors of he basically missed the 2 previous seasons with the shoulder surgery. Mm-hmm. He is relatively old. I think he's 38 now. And so they're definitely taking a lot of risk. But with that being said, you look at what he did in 2024. It was, and I'm one of them, it was a no-brainer to re-sign him. I thought the contract he got was completely on par with the market. But fortunately, kind of what you were saying, this is his last season under contract. And so if he really does struggle in the entire first half, they might have to pull Chris Taylor or Jason Hayward or whatever. And, there really is no downside to having to DFA him if we get to that point. But to your initial point, it's spring training. Let's see what happens the first couple months. Then we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he may have emptied the tank completely in 24. That may have been everything he had left, and he left it all out there. And you think about what he was tasked to do night in and night out, not just, and people always talk about the postseason. Look at the regular season, how many injuries they had, how much they were leaning on him and Daniel Hudson and some of these other guys that I just don't think were equipped to do that for the long haul. Hell, that's dangerous to do for a young relief pitcher, with all the fears of Tommy John and shoulder surgery and everything like that, to lean on 2 guys who have been injury prone, especially in Treinen's case with the multiple shoulder injuries. It was just a matter of time of when it was going to catch up to him. I think the thought process that I had coming into the season was now that there wasn't as much on his plate, from last year, especially in the postseason. Maybe now he could get a full offseason of recovery and rest, and he could kind of come in to this offseason and this spring training similar to how he came in 24. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like you're a little bit more fresher, not as much fatigue. Don't forget he missed 3 months last year with the forearm injury. But I just wonder at this point, is everything due to overusage and age, and his body now just can't even get the command right? And if you lose the command, Kev, man, I don't know what other scenario you could throw this guy in if he has no command, especially of that slider.
All right. You're about to be impressed. We're about to knock out a few segments in this 15-minute stretch. So here we go. Katie Wu, who covers the Dodgers, first year with the Dodgers for The Athletic, broke this deal out of nowhere. And I've got to say, this one caught me off guard. Uniqlo is now the official field partner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So this is something similar to what USC has done. So it's still called the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, but the field is, I think, partnered with United. And so I haven't actually been to a game or anything in a couple of years at the Coliseum, so I haven't seen it. But I have to imagine there's probably United stuff plastered all around the field now. Uniqlo, we don't have the details yet. Obviously, we'll follow up when the numbers come out. But it's apparently a very massive deal on the field partnership. So what I'm expecting is you're going to go to Dodger Stadium and you're just going to see Uniqlo plastered everywhere. You'll probably see it on the field itself, I have to guess, whether it's spray paint or whatever, or they find a way to put it somewhere that's obviously visible on the mound maybe. But Uniqlo is going to be everywhere. So I've shopped at Uniqlo a few times. Great brand, really good. Got no issues there. Obviously, it's a Japanese partnership. Dodgers continue to bring in that Japan money as they do with Shohei Ohtani. But let me ask you this, Chris. Mm-hmm. In a hypothetical world, if Uniqlo were to up the game, and I know that Mark Walter and the Dodgers ownership group told them it's off the table, we're keeping Dodger Stadium as is, we're not touching it. But if Uniqlo, kind of did what Mark Walter did to Jeannie Buss and gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, and now it's called Uniqlo Stadium or Uniqlo Field, what would you do in that circumstance? Would you continue to call it Dodger Stadium no matter what, or would you ride the current and go with the flow?
Man, I'll tell you, it's still, so 3 points. One, it's still hard for me to call Crypto Arena. I still want to call it Staples, because it just had a better ring to it. And never mind the product or anything like that. It's just the ring off the tongue. Second, Madison Square Garden is still called Madison Square Garden, even though I believe it's sponsored by Chase. Chase is now, I believe the Chase Bank is the sponsor for Madison Square Garden. And third, I actually knew about this story about a day or two before it actually broke. A source of mine told this to me. They just didn't have the name of the actual place. They just said it was going to be a Japanese company and Dodger Stadium could be going through a name change. So I didn't feel comfortable tweeting that out without knowing the company name or anything like that. And it was just based on what somebody that, I know and have a lot of respect for had heard. But yeah, I think for me, would I ride the current? Probably not, because here's the thing. I barely call it Dodger Stadium as it is. I call it the Ravine, baby. Chavez Ravine. I just call it the Ravine. That is how I roll. I'm a little anti-establishment myself, Kev. So probably I wouldn't adjust everything, but it is a good opportunity for the Dodgers, like you said, to bring in, that partner, to have that kind of partnership. I'm sure it means a lot of money for the organization and everything like that. And this is what the team has done. And this is also the Shohei effect, the Yamamoto effect, and even to a lesser extent, the Roki Sasaki effect of having these guys in Dodger blue, because all of these companies now want to partner with the Dodgers. So it just makes sense.
They'd have to pay me, or they'd have to give me a very nice package of Uniqlo merch for me to embrace calling it Uniqlo Stadium. No matter what, unless I get those perks I just mentioned, it's Dodger Stadium to me for life. I will never call it anything else unless they bribe me, but I don't care. It's Dodger Stadium, live or die. That's how I'm going to live. I will say, Staples Center, I know it. I know a lot of people have a tough time with the name adjustment. I honestly didn't give a crap. I just call it crypto now. Like to me, the iconic basketball arena, and this is to my other point, is always going to be the Forum. Whether you want to call it the Great Western Forum or just the Forum itself, that is truly the house that the Lakers built. That is where the greats like Magic Johnson, Kareem, Jerry Buss establishing the Lakers. To me, that will always be the cream of the crop when it comes to Lakers basketball. And they're sponsored by Kia. They're called the Kia Forum now. To me, it's always just the Forum. I don't care.
Yeah. By the way, Uniqlo just texted me. They said, how much to buy? Wow. How much to buy your partner? They want to buy you, Kev. Seriously. That's just, I mean, I don't know. Should I tell them you're for sale or what?
You know, I'm willing to put a price on myself. We can talk.
No, but I mean, hey, okay. Let me ask you this then. In a serious note, Uniqlo comes to you and says, "We want to partner with you in your show, but we want you to change the name of it and everything like that, and we'll give you, I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000 or something like that." Like, what would you say?
Hand me a pen. Hand me the paper. Let's do it, baby.
Anyone could be bought, man. You know, to quote that the alderman from the Untouchables, "You fellas are untouchable." Is that the thing? Hey, anyone could be had.
And that was my point about, you know, they're saying Dodger Stadium is untouchable, but everything has a price.
Of course, man. It's
so
money.
I don't want to get too comfortable and be like, okay, Dodger Stadium is safe, because that narrative can change on the flip of a coin. If they give them an offer, they can't refuse.
Took $700 million to go from Staples to Crypto Arena in 2021.
Crazy. It's like a 20-year partnership or something.
Something like that, yeah. Unless they go bankrupt.
Which could happen like FTX Arena. All right. There has to be an idiot of the week, and this idiot did a really good job of isolating himself and made it really easy for myself. So I'm just minding my own business. I'm having a nice day, and I get a notification that Miguel Rojas of the Los Angeles Dodgers, obviously, has just been caught using a banned substance and now will be suspended 80 games. And so immediately for that 5 minutes, I am scrambling. I'm rattled and just upset at the fact that a Dodger, especially the likes of Miguel Rojas, who is now one of the biggest heroes in franchise history, just got busted using performance-enhancing drugs. And that would have really set it up for all the haters out there to now diminish the Dodgers 2025 World Series, because they would have been like, well, if he was cheating in spring training, he was probably cheating during the World Series. Then more notifications pop up, and Evan Drellich says, I don't remember, but it's my mistake. It's not Miguel Rojas. It's Johan Rojas or whatever of the Philadelphia Phillies. My apologies. This is like, it's not the same magnitude because this is still far worse, but it's definitely a tier or two below when JP Hornstra said Shohei Ohtani to the Blue Jays. In my opinion, if you're a professional reporter for The Athletic, you can't post the wrong player got busted like that for PEDs, because in this internet universe, screenshots will last forever. Yeah. And that could have potentially have ruined Miguel Rojas's reputation for the remainder of his one-year career, nonetheless. But anyways, my point is, you're a professional reporter. You're getting paid. You need to triple check. You got to check with your sources. You got to make sure you are right about something like that, because you are about to ruin someone's reputation. Let me pass it over to you. I know we were talking about this before the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, you're not wrong on anything you said. Triple check, think before you post and everything like that. Make sure you have all the right things and everything. And this also goes to show you where we're at as a culture. It's not about always being right. It's about being first. And in this instance, let's say you were first and you had all the right information, but just a brain cramp, rushing. I mean, we've all made mistakes when texting with autocorrect and everything like that. And clearly this was something where he saw Rojas and, you know, maybe he didn't have the right first name or anything like that. So he probably just went to Miguel instead of saying, oh, it's actually Johan. And he should have jumped on that. I don't know the time lapse it was between when he posted it and when he made the correction or anything like that. But yeah, you're right. That could have some dire consequences and everything. And, people already as it is, when guys have things right, are relentless, yourself included, Kev. I mean, that's just part of, who you are. Sometimes you get caught up in that internet game yourself. Not saying you're wrong on it, but I'm just saying it's like you're not allowed to make a mistake. Mistakes can happen. And there was a retraction put out there. The right player was posted about. Rough situation for Rojas, for Johan Rojas, who's been a big part of the Phillies for the last few years. These things happen. It was a brain cramp. He apologized for it and he made the correction, and that's it. Let's not get like, you're wrong. You suck. You're a hack. You suck. You're a liar. You're this, because Kev, it's bad enough as it is, even when these guys are reporting good information. And I know this because I had to go through this myself in 2018. And people never let me live down the fact that the Dodgers were closing in on Bryce Harper. And I was on top of that story. But the fact of the matter was he ended up signing with the Phillies, and people were, coming at me all different kinds of ways, So it sucks. And all I was doing was reporting on good information that I was getting at the time. So, I'm just saying you're not wrong, but how we go after these dudes after these things happen, you know what I mean? I think that has to matter too. Like, calm down. Mistake was made. It got corrected. Let's move on. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we won't bring him up much longer in this in my lifetime. Only good times for Evan Drellich, but he is the idiot of the week. Congratulations.
Okay. All right. I'll let you.
So
yeah.
Just gonna power through this real quick. So Yoshinobu Yamamoto was officially named the Dodgers opening day starter. Really no surprise there. Well deserved. So he gets that recognition. Dave Roberts said now that Shohei Ohtani is back in Dodgers camp. They may not pitch him during the Cactus League, but they are going to ramp him up. And early on in the season, they expect him to throw at least 3 to 4 innings in his starts. So I think that's a pretty good sign. And so what I expect for the Dodgers in those early starts, they're going to piggyback someone like Kyle Hurt or Ben Kasparis, or maybe Robleski potentially if he's available, and help manage and get those outs. Now, this is my other point real quick that I wanted to make sure I get out there. In spring training, there's always winners, there's always losers, and Honey Oats kind of pointed to the guy I wanted to talk about real quick. The biggest winner, I think, for me has to be, Santiago Espinal is the biggest winner, but we've talked about him a lot.
Yeah.
Non-roster invite, going to make the Dodgers roster. But I think in terms of a guy, really a name for him, a guy that was traded last season from the Giants to the Red Sox, then the Red Sox to the Dodgers. And there were some really good articles. I know Jack Harris wrote about it. It kind of hurt his confidence. But now he's really finding himself in the Dodgers organization. The second biggest winner to me has to be James Tibbs right now. He has been hitting the hell out of the ball. I know he's batting above 300. He's proving himself in the outfield. He's able to play some first base. And will he make the Dodgers opening day roster? Absolutely not, because there's just not room for him. But I will say, if he continues to play well in AAA, and maybe there's an injury here or there, or someone's struggling and they want to get up a fresh bat, I think James Tibbs is going to get a pretty good look at some point during the middle of this season. Can't tell you exactly when, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that he is looking really good, and I'm hoping that he kind of gives us a similar career pathway as Jock Peterson did.
Yeah, that's an interesting comp. I hopefully he could be better. But it sounds like, Jock, at least on the early stage of his career, that's not bad to be in, because Jock had some good moments with the Dodgers early in his career. He just unfortunately never really developed into what we thought he was going to be as a pillar within this organization, but still, a lot of good moments that he still had. I'm really impressed with Tibbs. He's been fantastic. And, it just goes to show you once again, the ability for the Dodgers to find talent. And they trade Dustin May, and they're able to get Tibbs and Earhart from the Boston Red Sox, right? And Earhart's had a really nice spring as well. They trade Michael Busch, who was struggling, who didn't have a role with the Dodgers. They get Zaire Hope, who I know, there were people calling on him that he loafed on a ball today. But overall, he's had a really good spring. And Jackson Ferris, who I think could also make an impact this season as well, especially as another left-handed starter while Blake Snell is, ramping himself up. And they got those two guys from the Cubs for Michael Busch. This is what the Dodgers do. The ability to identify talent, the ability to, fix whatever flaws they have and see things that maybe the Red Sox and the Giants did not see, or the Cubs maybe didn't completely value with some of their guys. So I'm really happy for this guy to have the opportunity. I mean, there is going to be a difficulty of a pathway forward this season, but injuries happen. Kyle Tucker could get hurt. Teo could get hurt. Baez could get hurt. So if that happens, it's good to know that you have these guys ready to go. And I think DePaula, Hope, and Tibbs, I think they got a bright future ahead of them. I just hope, there is a pathway for them to not only get called up, Kev, but to be everyday players, and given the fact that Teo and Tucker are on guaranteed 2-year deals, can you wait these guys out long enough to where it's like, damn, they're just rotting away down in AAA, and now we have to deal them because they want to play every day somewhere. I think that's going to be the biggest question with those guys, is what their role is going to be and how long can you stash them away before their time is ready to get called up.
So here's my 30 seconds final thoughts, and then I'll pass it over to you for your final thoughts, and we're out of here. You mentioned actually the 2 hitters that have really impressed me. Well, there's been a lot, but Teoscar Hernandez has just been on fire. I think he's setting himself up for a huge bounce back 2026 season. Don't want to see him get hurt, because last season he got hurt, and that kind of really affected him for a couple months there. And then Kyle Tucker, he's hit a couple home runs now, unofficially, I guess, because it's spring training. But you're starting to see the power there, and talk about it more in the future. But I think he's going to have a career high in home runs for the Dodgers this season. Pass it over to you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. What are your final thoughts or anything else you want to talk about before we sign off?
Yeah, it's good to see. I think when the vets are locked in to the spring, and I was thinking about this, I mean, granted, these guys are not competing for jobs. Max's spot is safe. Teo's spot is safe. Tucker is the high money man of this team. And certainly, people are going to be looking at him, but I don't know if they're going to be looking at him the way they've looked at Freddie Freeman, like Mookie Betts, like Ohtani, but they very well could. What I enjoy seeing them, by the way, shout out to Kyle Tucker and the new dad, being a new dad. Maybe some of that power is coming from the new dad strength, Kev. You know what that's about, man. You know how it is, and, totally revitalized. But I think what it shows is, if these guys coming off back-to-back World Series championships, money guaranteed and everything, if they're coming into spring training looking to rake and looking to win games like the Dodgers, minus today's game, of course, and looking to set the tone, then there's people, the guys that are on the non-guaranteed deals and the minor leaguers have no excuses not to go out there and play hard and show what they can do. Yes, there may not be a spot for you now, but what you do now could affect what comes up in the future, because especially for a team like the Dodgers, injuries happen. Phantom IL stints happen. So we have shown, or the Dodgers have shown, I should say, and Dave Roberts in particular, we are willing to go deep in our farm system to get help from anybody, from AAA to AA and all of that in between. So be prepared, because you never know when your number is going to be called. So that's the other thing I respect from Tibbs, from Hope, from Earhart. Noah Miller has had a nice spring as well. Santiago Espinal is a terrific story. And not that impressive because he's a former All-Star, but still, it's just good to see these guys take these games and these moments seriously, because they got something to prove. So with that said, pal, thanks for having me on tonight. It was fun.
Right. Thank you guys for listening to the Incline Dodgers podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts about James Tibbs or the World Baseball Classic. Give us a prediction of who's going to hit a home run. And for those listening on the audio feed, whatever it is that you prefer, there's so many different platforms out there. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But we are just, next week is opening, next week is opening day.
26th. Yeah.
So we're almost there, guys. Let's do it. All right. Everyone have a good rest.